got a route set. We're going to go out past the west side of St. Thomas, and once we're past there, we just go all the way straight up to Hamilton in Bermuda. I've zoomed in on this entire path and watched it very, very closely in lower zooms to make sure that there's no rock or something sticking out in the middle of nowhere that you wouldn't have thought to be there. That's an important part of these things. You cannot assume that there's nothing in the way. And main reason that we're going around the western tip of the island is the prevailing wind direction is going this way, and so there's no point in beating up wind. And plus, as we get out around between St. Thomas and St. John, first of all, we have to go, there's a reef in here that you have to kind of find your way through, and then secondly, there's the British area of these islands here, and the British are being very territorial right now about the British Virgin Islands and arresting people who happen to cross their sea boundary and fining them huge money, like $20,000, which is just so short-sighted and stupid, it's not even funny, but that's what they're doing. And so it's making it very important that people hug these islands, these US islands, on the way out and avoid the British line. And they're very, very edgy about the whole thing. I don't, it's typical British way of doing things, I think. Very heavy-handed. And that's that. We'd very much like to arrive in Bermuda during the daylight hours, because we're told that although it's well charted and channeled and buoyed, that these areas, as you enter into Bermuda's eastern side, it's an area that you don't want to take chances with. Although I'm confident that our charts are updated and we'd certainly be okay. Really nice if we could do that during daylight hours.
We're going to go through two areas, emergency management and then our daily operations. So from an emergency management perspective, I want to go through each of these topics: Mayday, man overboard, etc., etc. So I'm just going to kind of work through them, ask questions at any point. This is really meant to be an overview and not a training course, so we can go through any of these items in more detail. Okay. But I want to make sure that we touch on everything so that I feel like we've had the discussion.
Okay. We'll get the midship line first. Mm-hmm. Yeah. You have gasoline as well as diesel? Yeah. Perfect.
We gotta go to the rig now. Yeah.
Of course, it's picked the rainiest day to leave. It has to be raining. Hey Tim, could you dog down that hatch with this? Just there's two bolts on the top, and just turn them. Tighten them up until it stops turning. Okay, we're ready to rock and roll, I think.
All right. Crap day to go.
Here's the hilarious. I've got the engine hours and stuff written down. Before we deploy the main, we're going to have to adjust the running backstay on that leeward side.
Rendezvous, this is the U.S. Coast Guard. Roger, good copy on all captains. Really appreciate
Cool, lightning. Probably best if you can avoid holding on to metal. I don't think I can. Yeah. Oh, that's a bummer. 3 red flares, they said.
Oh no.
And now they're calling for the guy to come back on the radio, and nobody's answering. They didn't say where, or they did, but I couldn't hear because they were breaking up.
Vessel in distress, United States Coast Guard on channel 16, over.
8 knots. Speed over ground. Probably got a little current pushing us, but yeah, that'll get us where we're going. Oh, for 7. It's time to go, regardless of what the weather was looking like, and it's blowing out there. But it is what it is. 34. We had 37 a second ago. Fortunately, our float knots aren't working. It is something.
Oh yeah, this is fun.
Beautiful day to leave St. Thomas.
What a beautiful sailing day.
Perfect sailing weather for the Shetland Islands.
If only we were in the North Sea, this would be a nice calm day.
It's a soft day, mate.
We're only about 5 miles off St. Thomas. Can't see it in the rain.
Boy, so that's been a rough passage so far. We've just been having just huge winds, like 35, 40 knots of wind at one point, and then big swells leaving the island. But now things are calmed down a bit. I mean, we're seeing, I don't know, 25 knot winds. Apparent. I'm doing like over 7 knots boat speed, so we're good there. And the sea state has actually moderated quite a bit. See a little sun behind us. But back there, St. Thomas, is still very cloudy. We'll wait and see what we get. Tim and Wendy just set this staysail. See if you can peek a little bit of extra. The only thing I would really like to do different is if I could get that thing lower, like right down against the deck and capture the wind that gets under the sail. But you know what? It's probably doing all right at funneling air through what they call the slot.
So we're getting really good lift back towards the run line. The question is whether you want to get there quickly or slowly, and if you want to ease the sails or not.
Just maintain boat speed.
Okay.
Keep going north, best we can. How you liking it, Tim?
That's fantastic. Nobody to bother you out here.
Except Kevin.
Except Kevin, yeah.
Oh,
As well he should, right?
please, that's not right.
That's not right. It's been good. A little rough start at St. Thomas, but since then, after the first 24 hours, it's just been beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. I can't imagine why we are not seeing other yachts out here going to Bermuda. It's kind of odd, but not complaining.
I think we're a little late, in all honesty. I think that we probably could have done this earlier. We could have scheduled it and gone a little earlier. But, you know, it is what it is.
I would have to say that they went early. We went at the right time.
Well, we have some doldrums coming up, so we'll have to...
We'll see.
We'll see.
I might eat those words.
Yeah. I love the sunrise. It's gorgeous today, especially after a full moon last night. So it's start to a new day. I think this is the third day. Fun yet?
Oh yeah. It's much better after 2 days on the water.
Yeah, we're just hoping that the weather doesn't leave us stranded with, you know, you kind of, the Azores High has been located north of the Caribbean all summer long, and for some reason, and it's just this elongated thing that has dead air in the center of it, and it doesn't seem to be any weather window that we don't have to sail through it or motor through it. That's another issue. We may have engine problems. We're not sure. Somehow there's oil all over the engine room right now, and I decided to leave it go until we get into calmer, until we really do run out of wind, and then I'll investigate and see what's going on. I can't even take a good reading on the oil level right now because we're peeled over so hard. And if we're getting boat speed, if we're getting knots and miles off, towards our destination, then we just have to keep going with that.
About 560 miles still to go, and we're getting 6 knots.
Well, this is our speed transducer, and as you can kind of see, it's got a lot of gunge on it, and that's some sort of a worm that's attached itself, so I'm going to try to break that off here with a toothbrush and just kind of see what I can do to clean that up. We're soaking it in white vinegar. White vinegar is a nice kind of mild acid. Helps break things apart. So I think that's a pretty good improvement to what was there before. There's a few little spots. I'm going to leave it in the vinegar for a bit and see if it doesn't clean it the rest of the way up.
I saw this in a movie once where you try not to have the
I did put it in there because beauty. Perfect.
What kind of man knowingly puts a hole in his boat?
seriously.
James on Sailing Zingaro had this paddle wheel transducer come loose, and he almost sank the boat by not knowing that water was flying up inside. And I'm of the opinion that somehow or the other that happened because this retaining ring wasn't screwed down properly. The second thing here is just a plug to make sure that you've got something to put in there while you're working on the transducer. But it's pretty much bomb-proof. I don't understand what could go wrong, assuming that the collar was screwed down. There's about 20 threads on it. I mean, you have to turn it quite a number of times before it's cinched down tight. And so I just can't understand why there was a problem. My thought is that it's either, what I told him was I thought that it was either a cross-thread issue where someone thought it was tight, but it really wasn't. And the other would be a mismatched product. This one's made by Airmar, and this is the standard one that they use for Raymarine systems. But there are other brands out there. It's pretty burly, and these things have not changed at all in decades. So I don't quite understand what happened with his. But I do not think they're unsafe. I think they're perfectly fine. Well, here we have our speed transducer functioning again, which is wonderful because it really helps us. We're basically using course corrections to try to capture as much wind as possible. And what we're seeing here is we're getting 4.26 knots or so. We're in very, very light winds. I mean, barely sailable winds. And what we're trying to do is maximize that. If you toggle between true and apparent wind, you'll see that we really only have 5.5 to 6 knots of true wind. But when we go back to the apparent wind, we're seeing 8 and sometimes going up to 10. And at 10 we can get some decent boat speed. If we had wind directly on the beam, we would have no apparent wind difference between apparent wind and true wind. And so we'd basically be trying to sail with 5.5 knots of wind, which this boat will not do. So the more we point, the more we convert true wind to apparent wind at a higher knots of apparent wind. And once we get up into the 10 knot range, we can really sail. So staying upwind, pointing into the wind, is the only way we can keep the boat moving. So we have, this is maybe a little loose, but we can't do much about it while it's underway. So I have to wait till there's time to snug it some. Remember, one hand for the boat, one hand for the camera.
What about one hand for the sailor?
Not much wind, but we're getting there. A little at a time. Running the gen set.
Not pilot whales would be my guess from the size. Come here, guys.
I think those are porpoise dolphins.
They look like
They're
big.
big.
Dolphins.
They're bigger than any dolphin I've ever seen.
They're pilot whale size. Come here, pups. Come here.
I think they'll be over here.
I don't know that they play on the bows the way the dolphins do. There they are. It's a blowhole. A lot of people just, they say, why don't you just sail? But it's tough when you have 1 to 2 knots of wind, and the sea is glassy smooth like this, and there's just nothing that can be done. We've got 3 more days of this if the weather window doesn't change, if the forecasts don't change. And if we're turn the engine off, we will just be sitting, bobbing around, waiting. And I'm sorry, but we just don't have the time or the energy for that. Well, there's Bermuda right there. Tim taking a picture.
Like a mirror.
Yeah. In typical British fashion, it's a big convoluted process for getting in, but
All good.
we knew what it was and did most of the work already. So they've told us to go out to the SD buoy outside the channel and to basically wait for permission to enter. We're about 3-4 miles away right now. Wendy's all happy and excited to be here.
I think I brushed my teeth.
Me too. Here we are arriving at the channel. We have permission. We've been granted permission to enter. We are in St. George's. Where the customs immigration dock is. So we have to go clear in.
Bermuda radio standing by. Call if you need anything further.
This is what it looks like. Nice little anchorage. Dinghy dock over here. Pulling up our dinghy, and the shackle just snapped right in half, which calls into question all the shackles for the dinghy. So we're going to be replacing them with a bigger size for one thing, and secondly getting all new ones, so cheap. And this was the front, which isn't even the heavy side of the dinghy. You gotta love this situation. This is where we're having to get through. It's reefs everywhere here, and luckily we're staying within the charted channels. But boy, is this a beautiful town or what? Beautiful island. Love the pastel colors. Tim says it reminds him of Newfoundland.
Greenland.
Greenland?
Yeah.
Greenland.
It was
It was a beautiful day today. Oh my goodness.
that one? Nope. Let me through.
Almost, but not quite.
Yeah.